Let's talk about Hollywood, man.
Yeah, the Weinstein thing and Feldman and all that. So our last podcast, or at this point, it'll be 2 podcasts ago, I think, if not 3, depending on how we break this up. But there was, we talked about, the Weinstein revelations. They were like pretty new. I think probably only like a week old at that point when we were talking about them. And obviously since then, there's been like a number of developments. And I would think a week from now, it's probably gonna happen again, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we released the last one, it was old news. So I'm sure by the time we release whatever this is going to be, it's going to be new developments.
The last one we were talking about the whole the potted plant, which I think sadly is like everyone's forgotten about the potted plant by now already.
That's so funny.
Forgot about the ficus.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. The current event of Harvey Weinstein being a gross sexual manipulator, I don't know, however you want to describe him, the impact of this sort of thing will ripple on for quite some time, hopefully. So despite the fact that, the current event itself may have passed, the impact on Hollywood, the impact on culture, the impact on society, hopefully will change.
Oh, I don't think it's passed.
A whole bunch of things. I don't think it will pass.
I don't think it's passed.
I think hopefully this will be a permanent.
Up.
I think this will be hopefully this will be a permanent stigma on what I view to be a ridiculously toxic culture in Hollywood.
So,
quickly, since the last time we talked, Weinstein apparently went to some kind of therapy session or rehab.
Yeah, he's cured. It was a 1-week European.
For 1 week, yeah, and they came
with
back
Roman Polanski, I think. Right?
Exactly, him and Roman and I guess Spacey were chilling. No, but he said he was all good after that week-long rehab thing. But have we heard anything else on his end? I mean,
so some are theorizing, and I don't know if this comes from any quote he had, but that he's going to try to like make himself almost like the hero out of this. Like he blew, like if there's like some big transformation in Hollywood, and he was the impetus for that. He's the real feminist.
He blew the lid off.
He blew the lid off. If it wasn't for him, that never would have happened.
Yeah, he was undercover, dude. He was actually in the trenches, like just fucking playing the role.
Hundreds, thousands, whatever it is, of women over his lifetime. That was just like when a cop goes undercover and they have to like take somebody out so they don't, like blow their cover. It's just
yeah.
It's the Python approach, right? I learned that from Mr. Robot.
Okay, so Weinstein's going to be the hero, so we got that. So what else? I know Kevin Spacey was like the next big thing.
Yeah, huge story. Kevin Spacey's a gay man now.
Who was surprised by that? Please, by a show of hands.
That's the big story.
Was anybody actually surprised that Kevin Spacey came out gay?
I'm not surprised.
He's a phenomenal actor, but I got to be honest. In every portrayal that he's ever done of a quasi-masculine character, I never bought it. Even on House of Cards, he played deviantly evil bad guy very, very well. But even in some of the sex scenes where he's supposed to be this like dominating masculine character, I never bought it for a second.
Dude, what are you talking about? He fucks dudes in that show.
Well, that too. But, but doesn't he also bang the Giants owner's daughter?
What did you find unconvincing?
Right? What's her name? The Mara girl. Right?
I never watched the
reporter,
show,
and then he pushes her in front of a train.
Yes, that's true.
Right? He's banging
spoiler
her,
alert.
The very first season.
Late spoiler.
Fuck you, spoiler alerts. Right. Number one, I haven't watched that show in like 3 seasons, but I did see that one. Right. And that's true. That was a regular heterosexual relationship. He didn't come out with his like freaky side until like 2 or 3 seasons in.
Right.
And then he gets down with like his wife.
So he was typecast, it sounds like.
His wife, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's had relationships with men. No, so
for anyone who
hasn't
hasn't
the Kevin Costner effect, just be yourself. You don't actually have to act.
Well,
let's not go down that road.
But for anyone who hasn't heard...
I don't have pleasant thoughts of Kevin Spacey at the moment, but easy with the Costner references.
From an acting talent, it's apples and oranges. But again, let's not go down there.
No, but just to quickly inform who hasn't been informed, basically Kevin Spacey was accused, or some dude came out. This is something that happened in the 80s, like 86, I think. And this guy, so this is like 30 years ago, the guy comes out and says, when he was 14, Kevin Spacey was in his mid-20s, and he apparently like pinned him down on a bed and tried to make a move on him. And Spacey, I mean, he came out and didn't deny it. basically was like, yeah, maybe it was probably a drunken thing, and I'm sorry about that. It was inappropriate. He apologized for it, and so he didn't deny it. And then now all of a sudden there's like a bunch of people coming out saying, oh, we all knew Kevin Spacey was a guy who was a predator. He preyed on young boys, or not young boys, more like
pubescent boys.
Well,
pubescent boys. Yeah.
So
this guy was 14 at the time.
So here's the thing: you try to be fair with these things because there's a lot of times there have been accusations thrown around that turned out not to be true. There's a lot of this so nervous about blaming the victim that maybe you're not. Like when Betsy DeVos came out and said no, we're going to give our boys in colleges a fair shake, and everyone was outraged by that, creating you're encouraging a culture of silence. And so you want to and also with everything coming out, you can see people being opportunistic. And
yes.
so just definitely trying to be fair when I'm reading the story. First off, what's fucking horrible is any of the press publications that their headline, and there was a bunch of these, was Kevin Spacey's chosen to live as a gay man. That was the headline of the story.
Yeah, I didn't finish that in the story, but yes, his don't be sorry. I just literally forgot to say it. Once that accusation came out and he said, yeah, I'm sorry, I probably did that. It was in a drunken state. His next fucking line was, I now choose to live my life as a gay man.
I've had relationships with different men and women, people that have been close to me. So he's tried to shift the attention away, which, all right. So to be clear, this actor, right, that, and he's I know him by his face, and I've definitely seen him in things, and I can't think of his name right now, but he's
Anthony Rapp.
Okay. So even right now, he's
he's a Broadway actor.
Fairly well-established guy.
He's been in a couple movies. He's the orange-headed guy with kind of glasses type things. Yeah. Geeky looking dude. Yeah, I know. He's been in a couple movies.
So he was 14 at the time, I believe, if I have that age right.
Jesus Christ.
He said, so again, when you hear the details of the story, because it's he came on to me. Well, that can be anything. We've all seen people come on to somebody else where it's within the realm of reasonableness and it's fine. And other times where it's you have to intervene because it's so creepy.
Yeah.
So the way I heard it described was, they were at a party. He got there. It became apparent that he was the only kid there. They were working on a project together. So it was kind of fine, I guess. He wasn't interested in what the adults were doing. He went in the back room to play video games or watch a movie or something. Kevin Spacey came into the room and he realized that the whole party was gone and there was no one else there. And then slowly started coming on to him drunk. Okay. Whatever. I don't care. You're drunk, fine. But that, if you commit a crime when you're drunk, you still you don't get a lesser sentence because you were drunk. That's not an excuse here. Climbed on top of him and started thrusting his hips into him.
Jesus Christ.
Then he got away from him somehow. And then there was this whole awkward exchange where he kept trying to leave. And, Kevin Spacey didn't rape him. But he did the thing where he put his hand on the door and was you sure you want to go? And he's yes, I do. This is a 14-year-old boy, right? With nobody left in the party. Everyone had left. Kevin Spacey knew damn well that he was still in there. It's creepy. It's very creepy. So on the heels of that story, which is pretty disturbing, right? And especially in the context of everything going on. So you have some of the press doing what we just said and burying the lead and saying that the story is about Kevin Spacey coming out as a gay man. But then also, which I found was not humorous, but kind of in some of the way that they've reacted. But a lot of people in the gay community, it's almost he was hoping they'd come to his rescue, are fucking furious because they're yo, you are now, we've been trying to shake this thing of
pedophilia thing.
Pedophilia with gays. And now you just basically conflated the two yourself as a way of weaseling out of this thing. Well, I'm gay. Yeah. So what the fuck has that got to do with hitting on a 14-year-old kid and really forcing yourself on them? So they're backlashing against him, all pissed off about that, which I think is great, Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm happy about it. In that regard, I'm not really happy about the situation, but he's it's that I heard it compared to, for a Jersey reference, I heard it compared to Jim McGreevey when he was our governor back in the 90s.
I forgot about him.
And he, But it's funny because I mean it's not exactly the same thing, but it definitely relates where he was in the closet and he was like, it all came out that he cheated on his wife, he did some fucked up shit, and he was like, well, no, dude, I'm gay, dude. That's the thing. I'm a gay dude.
But
and
aside from that, was there any?
I think
was there any like?
Yeah, I think
pedophilia.
No, I don't know if there was pedophilia.
I think there was like political wrongdoing associated with his cheating on his wife with like another dude or something.
Because I heard
the
wife thing that like he came out like, oh, I'm sorry, I cheated on my wife. But then the rumors, and I don't know if there was anything to
everybody knew,
was that not only did she know, but she used to partake in like
I mean, and everybody that
some
worked
group
for
fun
him
with
knew
him.
That's possible, and that's not. I'm not trying to draw that parallel.
Yeah.
The only and I don't think there was any pedophilia involved. I'm trying to draw the parallel that he pivoted these like accusations of impropriety, and I'm maybe
so at the time there was some other political firestorm, and then this is when he chose
pivoted this to come out of the closet.
Yeah, it's a political move.
I'm a gay dude.
Gay card
he's like a Democratic.
Oh, look at me, I'm a victim. Like, oh,
and
look at how courageous he is now.
Yeah.
So, well, it may have worked because I don't know what you're talking about, but I remember him.
It was a big thing back then, but we were only like 9 years old at the time.
Yeah, I remember my dad calling me during the press conference, and I said, "Oh, McGreevy's like they're doing a big presser," and he's like, "What is he, a fag?" I was like, "Yeah, I think that's it." He's like, "Yeah, everyone knows." Like, all right, what time's your mother going to be home?
McGreevy.
Jeez, that was a blast from the past.
Yeah, but it is a slight parallel as far as just the pivoting thing.
So as far as like being suspicious and like trying to give him like a fair shake, that's kind of what I was getting at. Like all like these little moves like make you like like why would you do that if you were truly innocent? Because in his statement it was like, all right, like you're right, he didn't deny it, but I also didn't find that necessarily to be a problem because he was like, this was 30 years ago. I honestly don't recall this. If it happened, I don't know how many different ways I could say I'm sorry. That's horrible. And I was like, okay, maybe there's more to this a little bit. Like, he's not, because if you were like overly defensive and you start slinging accusations like that, that seems like that kind of make you seem guilty too. Like you're protesting too much.
I would say if this was like possibly some kind of isolated incident, then maybe that would make sense. But now you are seeing other celebrities come out and mention that, oh yeah, this is like an open secret. Same thing with fucking Weinstein.
Didn't they?
This is an open secret.
Didn't they have a joke in Family Guy of Stewie running around a mall naked saying, "I just escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement"?
Yes.
Yeah, so like people knew this is not.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is not a one-time thing.
That's the second time now that McFarlane has been.
Yeah, listen, these people in Hollywood.
I'm liking McFarlane more and more.
The entire culture and the entire group of people in Hollywood are completely disgusting. They are morally corrupt. It is gross beyond comprehension. The idea. And the thing that drives me nuts about this, and I kind of had this conversation with my wife the other day, is I thought to myself, what kind of parent would allow their child or even a young teenager to go anywhere unsupervised anywhere? Forget just Hollywood. I know, gross, horrible parents who are looking for a meal ticket. I get it.
Parents of child stars, because you could argue that's a form of child abuse in and of itself. So you're already dealing with
that's exactly what I was
kind
of saying to my wife was like, people who have their kids childhood actors and I think that's wrong in general. I said to my wife, I said, look, if we had a kid who was super duper smart, a really good engineer, would I go ahead and send them to, the highest tech firm in the company at the age of 9 and start working? No, they're a kid. Why then somebody, because they have an amazing voice as a 9-year-old or a great actor as a 9-year-old, they're then going to pursue this career as a Hollywood star in Hollywood as a 9-year-old? They're a child. They're supposed to have a childhood, a normal childhood. Whether they're amazing at something or not, you can't force them into a job or make them have a job. That's insane. There's freaking community theater. There's proper things that they could be doing that's age appropriate. Them going into Hollywood in this clearly disgusting, morally bankrupt atmosphere. I don't even care if you're there with your kid. Apparently Elijah Wood's parents, supposedly his mother was there to shield him from this stuff because he said, yeah, it totally existed, but it never happened to me because my mother was there. I don't even care about that. The fact that you would even let your kid do that sort of thing to me is disgusting and reprehensible. I would never let my child do that.
What if your kid wanted to do that?
Like I said, there are tons and tons of places where my kid can explore their talents adequately that they don't have to go to Hollywood to do that.
Sarah Lee, that's before BoJack went full, like, off the SJW deep end. They did a pretty good job of depicting that whole story with Sarah Lee from. I mean, you've watched the show, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
so she was a child actor in his show Horsing Around,
Yeah.
and then she became like a huge like pop star like at 18, 19, 20 years old. And then, you know, they really hammer that point with her that she's like fucked up developmentally and like she had a horrible childhood, even though she was super famous. And
this is like the Disney track, basically, right? The Hannah Montana.
Listen, there are
exactly.
Spears.
When it comes to
it's no wonder why none of these kids are fucking normal when they get older.
No
like,
kidding.
You look at Drew Barrymore, and it's like it's amazing she's as quote normal as she
Wow.
is, considering. And granted, but she also came from like Hollywood royalty almost, like we're like a family of that. So maybe they had like some way of managing it a little better. But it should be, you know, when people judge like these child stars like that grow older and are all fucked up. It's like, dude, you have no idea.
So much sympathy.
No
for
idea.
Them. I have so much sympathy for those poor kids. I mean, listen, children have developmental stages that they have to go through. Adolescence, you have to go through it in the proper developmental stages, or you will be almost permanently fucked up for the rest of your life. So the fact that you would skip some of these stages or compromise them for your child because, they're great at singing or great at dancing. Well, guess what? 10 years from now, they're going to be just as good, probably better at singing, dancing, whatever the hell it is. Let them have a normal childhood, or at least do the best you can to let them have a normal childhood, because these are necessary developmental stages for them to become a well-balanced, normal functioning human being in society. If you bypass those opportunities or compromise them in any way, shape, or form for whatever reason, whether they're underskilled or overskilled in a particular aspect, you are doing irreparable damage to that child. So that's my whole point on this thing is you can't just. And what do you do in movies? You don't have kids acting in movies. Of course, you're going to have that kind of thing, but the parents of these kids really, really, really need to make sure that their kids have the proper work-life balance. Like, I mean, there should be no child stars. There should be kids that maybe were in a couple shows and a couple movies for a year or so and then faded away until they were an adult and then came back to act. You have kids that have been acting since they were 6 till they were 21 years old. They're fucked up in the head.
Well,
they never had regular childhood relationships with kids. They never went to school with other kids. They never got to progress normally, mentally, emotionally. It's no wonder these people are all messed up. And then those are the people that end up being the Kevin Spaceys of the friggin' Hollywood who then abuse other kids.
Or
it's a gross, disgusting cycle.
We started talking about this because of how many kids get abused. And so you're not even talking about necessarily kids that are being abused, but then you add in that element, you know, that a percentage, you know, maybe we'll get a sense as to what it is. Hopefully it's low, but it's probably... I'm sure it's higher than the rest of society.
Well, that
where there's a percentage of them that would have been abused. And so something else that we should bring up in this conversation is, you know, everything that's happened with Corey Feldman this week, which, so Corey Feldman, we talked about this on the last conversation we had about this, child star, him and his other buddy, Corey
Haim.
So the story goes that Corey Feldman was sexually abused, you know, surrounded by these predators during this whole time. His buddy Corey Haim was actually raped, according to him. And so Feldman claims that he was sexually assaulted various times and sort of like passed around, as he said it, but he was never raped in the way that Haim was. Haim eventually ended up committing suicide. Corey Feldman is not a normal dude. No. If you hear him talk, and he's like, you know,
he dresses like Michael Jackson. Yeah.
He's a broken human.
He has like he puts out videos of himself like basically like as a new Hugh Hefner. He's a weirdo. He's a fucking weird dude. I mean, you don't dress like Michael Jackson now, and you know, this ain't 1988. You know, you're not fucking doing a remake of the Thriller video.
So he's famous in this realm for years ago, like going a couple times. It seemed like he was trying to blow the lid off this thing, and at one point he did a tour where he did a bunch of like mainstream interviews. He was on The View, and famously Barbara Walters made this, I hope it's a regrettable comment about how he's like going to take down a whole industry. And she was like saying it like as like a shaming towards him, which is really like either you think he's full of shit and that's what's making you say that, or there's a wild disconnect with like, he's saying that there's like a problem of like a child molestation in this community, and you're concerned about ruining careers. But anyway, so, but that, nothing, it sort of like subsided. The story goes that the reason he hasn't named names is because there's a lot of frustration about this. This comes up a lot, like with Milo, when this happened. I know some people were upset that he didn't name like the priest and any adults that were inappropriate with him at the time, because they likely didn't stop with him. And so, Feldman did an interview. So he's now trying to raise $10 million. It's a lot of money. In order to make a full feature film that he's going to fully like do everything for. And as he says, like blow the lid off of this, name every name that he has, give all the evidence. And so he actually was on with Matt Lauer this week on the Today Show. And it was a pretty like good interview in that Matt, some people are annoyed with Matt saying that he was like attacking, a victim. But I think there are legitimate questions. It's a tough topic, right? So there are some legitimate questions as to whether how sincere Feldman is being, especially now that he's trying to get $10 million. But so Feldman's point is there's a statute of limitations in California that doesn't exist in other states. He would immediately be sued by these people like into oblivion. Sure, he'd have to retract it. He doesn't have confidence that like once, because he tried before, he spoke to the cops countless times before, he tried going to the media before, and it just kind of died down so that he would just get railroaded. He could potentially be killed. I don't doubt that that's not like a real possibility, and that, whether it be some crazed fan or someone for hire, but and so that he needs to hire security. He needs to be able to protect himself against lawsuits with lawyers, but that he's going to blow the lid off this thing. And specifically, and that's where we're wondering if this is going to start going, is it's not just the sexual harassment and rape and whatever of women and men, I'm sure, but that are adults. But, there's been like this like underbelly, these rumors, so, we sort of drifting around and some that have been verified, like with Roman Polanski, of like pedophilia type shit that goes on in Hollywood a lot of people know about that nothing happens with. So,
and we linked in the last episode to, and we'll link it again in case you didn't listen to the last one, about just the prevalence of pedophile rings. This has been a thing that it exists in a lot of different places, and we linked to Sargon of Akkad's video about it, of just basically listing all the different pedophile rings. So it's like, okay,
recent ones.
We can't prove, things like Pizzagate or anything like that, and nobody here is suggesting one way or another what it is, but the idea that these things can't exist, or it's ridiculous to even consider the fact that they would exist in a place like Hollywood, it's not a valid agreement.
It's exactly where they would exist.
Yeah. But I if I can just like step back from this kind of like more reactionary tone that we're taking, and I do want to go back into like kind of what Rob was mentioning with why these parents would put them through this kind of a situation. And what I have no familiarity with this, and I'm sure none of us really do have any firsthand experience with it, but like, what do you think it's like for a kid just to grow up in a situation where they're like a child actor? Because I mean, sometimes I hear on the radio, right? It's like Disney, and they're like, "Oh, do you want to be the next Hannah Montana?
Yeah.
Do you want to be the next blah blah blah? Come down to Times Square on July 31st, and we're gonna do an audition and this and that, and you could be the next whoever. Whoever the latest Disney craze is, you could be the next that person." And like these auditions happen, and I mean, part of me agrees with you, Rob, where it's like, yeah, this is probably just like a shitty lifestyle for a kid, and it's very unfulfilling, and they don't get like the true childhood experience. I have to imagine that there's a lot of people that are like, they don't make it per se, but they're maybe like side actors, or they maybe get one role and then they're done. Maybe I think there's probably a lot of people in this kind of realm who live relatively normal lives.
It's a continuum.
And then there's like that spectrum of like crazy motherfuckers like Britney Spears, who just like, or Christina Aguilera, who reach that crazy stardom level. Yeah. And then, they are the ones who like, they go through their entire childhood, like every class they take is in like a trailer on a set. you know, they have like one guy teaching them, and like whoever their co-stars are, they're learning, you know, algebra or whatever the fuck they learn. You know, I mean, who the hell knows how that is even worked out, you know, when you kind of compare it to the public school education or the Catholic school education that other people might have, whatever. Who knows how it even compares, but you just gotta, I'm wondering like what the average like kind of situation is. Like, well, what's the average experience for someone who like is a child star or an aspiring child star?
So my even bigger concern is not all the stars that you hear from, the people who you know about, is for every big Hollywood star that's out there, there's probably 10,000 people who were extras in something, who were tried it for 10 years and were starving waiters for God knows how long and all that kind of stuff. But how many people who never made it, who were part of a casting couch or were a childhood actor who never made it, who had gross, disgusting sexual advances made on them and all that kind of stuff. You hear all these are just the few people who actually made it into Hollywood. But how pervasive is it on all the kids who never made it? Because now it's coming out like talent agents were doing this kind of stuff for kids. There was I can't remember. Mike Cernovich had posted a link to it, but there was a documentary a couple years ago made by some guy where he interviewed 4 kids who were actors, and their talent manager, like the agent for them, was molesting these kids, and these were no-name kids. They were in spaghetti commercials once or twice. So it's not even so much the 1 or 2 guys that are famous, the Corey Feldmans or anything like that. And he's a D-list celebrity at this point. You know, there are thousands of people who never made it, who I'm sure were subject to this kind of stuff. So it's so wide and it's so pervasive. And it's so big that is the most disturbing part to me, is I don't think people understand what the possibility of the scale of this type of thing could be. And just recently, there's been tons and tons of accusations coming out against a very, very huge and powerful Nickelodeon producer who's produced like Hannah Montana and all these like childhood shows and stuff like that. And they've shown, there was a woman who split.
Hannah Montana is the only child star we're aware of, because it's
that's the only one.
There's other ones.
But if you ever watch, if you ever watch a Nickelodeon stuff like that, there are tons and tons of shows. And this guy is literally like the producer of all these shows. And this woman diced up, like apparently the guy's got like a foot fetish. There's tons and tons of photos of him like pretty inappropriately posing with like these little kids and stuff like that. And you watch some of like the clips. This woman cut some of the episodes and put them together as like a montage. It's got like 11-year-old girls in like hot pants and like little crop tops, like doing a dance, like all this weird shit on these Nickelodeon shows. And supposedly there's accusations of him.
Well, now when you
like,
hear something like that, you go back and watch all the videos.
No, but I got to be honest with you. I can remember a number of years ago being at my niece's and nephew's house and them turning something on and like me seeing these like 10 and 11-year-old girls like doing this dance. And I'm like, what the frig are they wearing? Like, how is this even on Nickelodeon? When I was a kid, Nickelodeon was like cartoons.
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Are You Afraid of the Dark? And like, what was that show where you got slimed if you said,
I definitely
you
don't
can't
remember.
say that on television, stuff like that. But there was never anything remotely promiscuous about stuff on Nickelodeon. Now there's these kid shows where like they're pop stars and it's completely inappropriate. And it just shows you how far the needle has been pushed in culture, that this is like somewhat acceptable. It's on television. You can watch it. It is weird. It is creepy. And finally, hopefully people are catching on to how destructive this is.
Cancel your cable subscription.
Can't we get 4chan on the case?
Yeah.
Isn't this in their wheelhouse? Can't they make some? They're big on the anonymous thing. They're great researchers. They fucking love attacking like this type of person, you know?
And apparently somebody said that, Viacom is like either owns Nickelodeon or something like that. This guy's got a contract with Viacom for 10 years. And supposedly there was some stipulation similar to the Harvey Weinstein stipulation that was like, you have to cover any accusations of impropriety or something like that for this. And again, this is a guy, producer of like the biggest childhood hit shows.
Well, so that's a question now then. Is that a sign like, oh my God, this guy had a clause in his contract for sexual, whatever?
Or is that a normal sort of thing,
or is actually that
level?
More normal and it's coming out, and
possible,
people like us are like, holy fuck, he had a clause in there?
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, that I don't know.
Because if that's the case, if it's really only these guys, let's pull these contracts and just see who's got the claws. And I think we've narrowed our list down. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe like the prevalence, or maybe like legitimately when you get to a certain status publicly in Hollywood, you're vulnerable to women who would make this sort of claim against you, because that happens too, where there are false allegations and. They want some sort of protection against us. So I don't want to totally write that off, but
I hear you.
It's I do like that it's sort of like lifting the lid off of like the culture there. And we talked about before we get to one of these points in culture and society where it's hard to tell in the moment, but is this one of those moments where it could go one way or the other? Could this be a moment where Hollywood's never the same and we sort of blow the lid off certain things, kind of like with Penn State or whatever?
I sincerely hope so.
Or is this like Corey Feldman the first time around, where it's like you watch the videos of what happened 15 years from now and it's like, holy shit, this happened? Like, really? This is out there? Did you ever see this? Let's talk about this, because nothing ever came of it. So I just hope that...
And I think, let me just say one other thing too. And I think it's kind of, whether it's conscious or subconscious, I don't know. But I think for decades, there's been kind of a concerted effort in the media and obviously in Hollywood to sort of, I mean, if you look at, Leave It to Beaver and what was the show with the sheriff guy and the little kid?
Oh, what the hell was that guy's name? Fuck. That was
the
little kid
Andy,
was
the Andy.
Hey Dude?
Andy Griffith show.
Yes, that
and
was
stuff
with
like that. Okay.
Ron Howard, Ron Howard.
Yeah, exactly, little Ronnie, right? Who supposedly was actually okay, actually a halfway decent human being. Didn't get messed up. But the point that I'm making is if you look back 30, 40 years ago into the stuff that Hollywood was producing, the morals that were projected through the art that they made back then were solid morals. And then somewhere along the line, it changed to where people who were, I'll put in quotations, morally conservative, or what I would consider people who actually had fucking morals.
The liberal takeover.
People who were actually moral.
It's the globalists.
Got portrayed as fuddy-duddies, as old, as esoteric, and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of things in old school conservatism that I don't necessarily agree with, but that doesn't mean you throw away the moral base of it. And I think since like the 60s and the 70s and maybe even earlier than that, the media and Hollywood has done that to the point where now we literally have on Nickelodeon prepubescent girls dancing in provocative clothing, and people are letting their kids watch it and they think it's acceptable. They think it's fine. They don't even think twice about it.
Well, I don't know if that narrative is exactly correct. I think it's correct maybe from the 30s on, but I think I was listening to another show recently and I heard that in the 20s there was some serious decadence going on in showbiz.
Yeah,
we know the flappers, we know the Roaring 20s, whatever, but even in Hollywood and show business, there was some crazy stuff going on, and there were some protests, and they kind of like pulled Hollywood back from already going down that road back then. So,
was that the Great Depression and World War II?
No, and I will say though, but so Hollywood may have been going down that decadent, immoral path, gross culturally path, but I would say that the vast majority of popular culture from the average person was the complete antithesis.
And I think that's why it got pulled back.
They were able to pull it back. Yeah. Now we don't seem to have that.
Well, the moral compass has certainly shifted and changed.
I mean, now we're in one of those moments where it seems like a lot of that stuff is changing. We'll see the direction it goes. Let's talk about the next generation being of a different persuasion, and also like taken down, like if academia actually goes down, which I don't know how it's holding out. I just waiting for.
Still blows my mind how people send their kids to these colleges.
$70,000 a year to go to school, and it's weird. It's like parallel paths where more and more people are self-educated. Podcasting is massive, obviously. There's tons and tons and tons of alternative media. Those alternative media platforms that are trying to like tamp down on like alternative voices, they're getting hammered, and like you're seeing that they're not just going to go away. Obviously, all the populist movements around the world, say what you will about their actual policies, I think they're probably an outgrowth of a change in the culture to push back on the culture. But at the same time, you still have like the university system doing what it's doing, it's Hollywood. We're at a point where maybe it gets fucked up now, and maybe it changes.
Gross.
Or,
I hope it craters.
Well, how do you think it, before we jump into academia, if we do go that route, I just want to say one last thing about the Hollywood thing, which is like, do you think that this is kind of like a process that just kind of is, it's like a selective process, wherein like, you have these maybe kids who want to become child stars, but they have parents who are very involved. So those parents quickly realize that this is not a situation that is good for them to be in. They pull them out. So the only ones who keep going through the system are people who are morally, they're not as strict with their kids. They're willing to let certain things slide. They want to get the meal ticket, like you said. So how much of this is kind of like based on that, where it's just like, you know, all like the good people get weeded out.
Well, that's exactly right.
You know, and I guess what it comes down to really is, it really depends on who's at the top, who's making the decisions of like who's casting these kids, who's doing that, and like all the morals, like whoever is drawn to this producer or this director, you know, it's kind of based on what he values, and like all the people who are like morally more you know, stringent, more you know, they have stronger morals, they get their kids out of a bad situation. They get weeded out.
So that's part of the whole problem with these people coming out, is they say, well, if I say something, they're just going to blackball me, and there's 10,000 other people behind me that'll just take my place. So what's really going to drive it, what's really going to change it is, and this is the Libertarian podcast for all intents and purposes, right? It's going to be the consumer.
It's got to be the consumer.
Is if the consumer finally stops consuming the stuff that Hollywood puts out, unless it's somehow rehabilitates its image, such that
we need some like fair trade Hollywood.
Yeah, well, something along those lines, where the people who are acting in it, the producers that are there, don't have any rumors swirling around them about sexual impropriety or any of this kind of stuff.
Happening.
And the quality and the content that is, and
the big budget movies are not. They're not like making money anymore.
It's not like it used to be, and that's a positive sign. And listen, at the end of the day, what you end up producing as a human being, as your job, as your art, as what you love, it's who you are. It really is who you are. The people that you surround yourself with is a reflection of who you are. They have an influence on you. It's a reflection of who you are. Who you marry, the children that you bear, the way you raise them, the art that you produce, the work that you do. It's all a reflection of who you are. So if you produce art that is morally bankrupt or completely devoid of any sort of moral compass, that's who you are, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, a person can produce something like that to make a point, but when you've done it year after year and decade after decade, it's just a reflection of who you are as a person internally.
So this is where I got to be a little critical, because
please do.
I don't really have too many issues with anything they've really said, but I think on the whole, you're not a lover of Hollywood, and you're not a lover of a whole lot of that it has produced. You've probably not been a lover of like all the great films. You probably love a lot of films that me and my friends fucking hate, and have like, your take on other movies that are generally regarded as some of the greatest things ever made, you probably like discard it as nonsense. So it might come more naturally to you as like, oh, what a surprise that, Woody Allen is what he is. Like, watch Manhattan. He's got a relationship with like a fucking like high school girl or whatever she is, like in that movie. And that's who he really is. And
well, I think I'm recognizing the reality of a situation. So when I can't watch a horror movie, okay, because watching somebody being disemboweled is gross to me. Like it literally makes me physically want to vomit. Some people can watch it. I can't watch that because that's not my makeup, because that is disgusting, that is vile, that is grotesque to me. Just watching it, the idea that you could sit there and write a script about how somebody's throat's going to get slit, how their intestines are going to get pulled out, and then you can raise money for it and spend 9 months shooting it and splicing together and all this stuff.
Yeah, but you're not a bad person. If
No, I'm not saying you're a bad person, but there's something particular about your makeup that makes that tolerable to you. And I'm just saying a horror film just as an example of it, okay? But my point is, if you were a person like myself who can't stomach or tolerate that sort of thing, you wouldn't be able to produce that as art. My point is, to produce, okay, so like Kill Bill is a ridiculously violent, disgusting movie. People love it. They think it's a great, and it may be. That's perfectly fine. It's great art. That's
I love
great.
Kill Bill. I love almost everything.
That's
Tarantino's
great.
ever
But the
done.
average person would never conceive of Kill Bill because it is so violent.
But it's hyperbole.
I agree with you.
As somebody who uses that.
I agree with you 100%.
Daily.
But the point that I'm trying to make to you is why doesn't the average person produce that? Because the average person doesn't have a weird, twisted, violent mind to even conceive of something like that, let alone raise money, have actors
So
come
highly
in
creative
and produce
minds on the whole are more prone to maybe some
They can be
other
extremes.
weird behavior.
Exactly.
I don't think that's an outrageous theory.
Let's take an example. The movie Eyes Wide Shut. Okay, that's a weird, gross, kind of disturbing to me movie. And maybe it's a reflection of reality. I'm sure it is somewhere. But I would never in a million years ever produce that as a form of work. It just would never.
But you can't produce. I could probably name a number of movies that are movies that you like that you couldn't or wouldn't be able to produce either, or that you'd have to put your mind in a particular like space
right.
that you're not really capable
right, and
of
that's
either.
Exactly
but
my
it's
point.
not always a reflection of your values and who you are. I think people can step outside of those and like entertain. That's why movies are kind of cool because you can play with. You're a Game of Thrones. You're a Game of Thrones.
If you're the one who produces it, you can't step outside of yourself to do that.
Yeah, of course
you
can.
Produced it.
Method actors, do it where they like really like buy into this role. That's
well,
not
this
them.
gets in now. This sort of gets into the philosophical argument of what
this is why I'm saying this is why I'm saying I think as a whole in your argument of the criticism of Hollywood, because a lot of people are going to be disagreeing with you on that idea, and that there's like this. I mean, I don't know, and I think it definitely makes some sense that maybe like somebody that's that creative and you combine that maybe with the power and privilege that comes from like being somebody high up within that world, where it's like the pinnacle of that thing. And maybe all the people involved, they don't have like the moral scruples of like middle America and all that stuff. Then it's not like outrageous to think that, or even predict that this would be like one of the outcomes in certain corners of it. Yeah. But what I think is like really shocking about the Hollywood thing is it seems to be like way more pervasive than like, I think even people that think about this sort of thing would be able to wrap their head around. At least that's like, are we looking at the tip of the iceberg or is this really it? It sure seems like the tip of the iceberg where almost literally everybody like involved, like has these stories. I was listening to real quick on the Fifth Column, Bill Schultz, who's a good personal friend of Lauren Sivan, who told the plant story. She was the one who, had that run-in with Weinstein that sort of blew the lid off of this. By the way, he said that the reason that she came out with that story at the time is because the first story came out about Weinstein, and then he did some sort of wiggling thing, and then she was like, "Holy shit, this fucking guy's going to get away with this." And so she came out with the story because she knew how ridiculous and out of control it was. I forget where I was going with that. Bill rattled off like 10 different stories that were outrageous about things that were going on, Roger Ailes and all these different things in all these different areas. And that's just like within one power structure, in like Hollywood or media or whatever. And he wasn't like a particularly high up guy at all. You know, he was just like some other schmuck walking the hallways that Bill O'Reilly probably couldn't tell you who Bill Schultz was, even though.
Yeah. I let's not misconstrue it. I don't intend to say that, the only way you can produce outrageous art is if that's your personality and that's who you are. But I will say that people who have that personality or that type of moral center and that sort of ability, they will have a tendency to produce that sort of art. If you took 10 conservative people, they're probably not going to produce the same art as 10 people with, let's call it, looser morals or different
who's
sort of.
the woman that does the spirit cooking?
Different sort of
Pizzagate thing.
But
I'm not saying there's always a disconnect. I definitely don't buy into this idea that you can't let your imagination go. Right now, Stranger Things is a really popular like show, and I think it's kind of that's the fun of art is that you can do these. Like I said, you're a fan of Game of Thrones. Yeah. Like I think one of the benefits of Game of Thrones being so popular is that it is sort of forcing in an age when we're trying to censor everything. It's some of the most outrageous shit that you'll ever see, but it's also part of like, I know it's fiction, but it's also like something that human beings did.
It's
like
rape
reflection was like
real
we have that machinery. Yeah. Jordan Peterson makes this point all the time. Yeah. Like, we need to reckon with the Nazis and talk about these things because that was us. That was our genes that we're capable of this. Yeah. There's a part of us that if we're not careful and like you get that you can go down this road. And so I think there's benefits of seeing and being confronted with this sort of thing. Because if you're shielded from it and then you come in contact with it one day, who knows how people en masse would respond to it? Whereas they could be like a little more like insulated to the concept because they've seen it before and they've thought through it mentally and, you know, decided where they fall on it with their own morals. But certainly when it comes to Hollywood and you like deify these people and you think that they're more than just an actor and you think that they're, you know, someone to really like aspire to be, well, you know, then maybe you're going down the wrong path.
Well, if they're going to be someone that you really aspire to be, I kind of just wish there was better shit coming out of it at this point. I mean, like,
it's been underwhelming.
I would like a bunch of Game of Thrones shit to come out. I mean, I like Game of Thrones. It's definitely got a lot of decadence and a lot of violence and a lot of, you know, whatever. But I consider that high art. I mean, as far as like what is getting produced in America today, like, I mean, I mentioned it in the last conversation we had. Like, I definitely would like to kind of be in a situation where like I could like be in another country and be like, yeah, I'm American, and like, yo, look at all this fucking good ass shit we do. Like, look what comes out of Hollywood. Look at these fucking great movies. Look at these great shows. Look at the art that we produce. It's, you know, this is you know, it'd be nice to be producing The Godfather right now, or to be producing things like Casablanca, or like, you know,
not the Jersey Shore.
Yeah, not the Jersey Shore. No,
although that wasn't Hollywood, right?
But it's MTV, New York, Hollywood, whatever. I mean, I don't know where we can go from here, but I would just say, in my personal feeling to, you know, end this is just like I would love to see something better, you know. Like, I
it
really
is the
would.
golden age. So if you're trying to be optimistic, we're talking about Hollywood, but does seem to be the golden age of television.
Television might be the hope.
Television is
crushing. There's some really good shows. You're right about that. You're totally right about that. But it's just like, who's making the TV shows?
But maybe this is the future.
How much do Hollywood studios have to do with it? Maybe they have a lot to do with it.
Maybe we're watching Hollywood. This is like their death throes or the beginning of it, and we're seeing the good art coming from. You know what? I don't know enough. I don't know where like these. You know where these awesome shows. You know, and obviously there's a lot of Hollywood crossover. I mean, Kevin Spacey with House of Cards. You know, maybe it's an evolving thing, but it does seem that you don't need to be in Hollywood to be doing these things anymore. And also now you're seeing more and more, it's tough to do a big budget movie, but as technology gets better and things like crowdfunding becomes more common, I think you're seeing more and more even films being sort of crowdsourced and coming about from that way. So maybe we'll just see this, you know, where it's dying there, but you see it rising in other areas, or maybe film and even television is not where it's at some point. Yeah, you hope that something in America is kicking ass artistically.
Yeah, I just don't want to be like going on vacation to Europe, which I rarely do. But if I was going to do it again at some point in my life, I would like to roll over there and like not like think like, oh, should I tell them I'm Canadian? Like, you know, because I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to be fucking attacked, like, just because of, you know, where I'm from. And, like, of course, we are, like, kind of like a cultural leader in the world, aside from a military leader, of course, and, you know, whatever. But
Bollywood, man.
Inflation leader.
Bollywood coming at you.
Bollywood, when I was in college, I had a number of Indian roommates. Yeah. And this guy rolls his eye.
Tell us about Bollywood.
But listen.
Sounds like a good segue right
here. And I will say, you know, they watched a lot of Bollywood films, mostly.
I had an Indian friend.
Mostly which were cricket games in which India played Great Britain, and there was a hero that would win the cricket game for the lowly Indian team. But I will say this. Though, the themes of like the Bollywood films were always like the underdog, and obviously it's probably a cultural thing, but the themes were always like the underdog, you know, coming up and pulling it out for their country, for their people, and that sort of stuff. And it was cool. I liked watching it. The production was okay. Some of the actors were pretty decent.
You know, that's the low hanging fruit of all plot line. Like
that's why all the conservatives love these fucking stupid ass fucking comic book superhero movies. That's why all conservatives love this bullshit, like the Captain America.
No, I gotta be honest. And when they first started making the superhero movies, like the first,
I like the X-Men
and stuff like that, they were very good. and they went off the rails like from there.
It's crazy right now.
They have been awful. They have been so bad. It's unbelievable.
Just every,
I refuse to watch them.
months.
They're so bad.
There's just one every couple months. It's getting annoying.
Did you like the first Guardian of the Galaxy, didn't you? Because I actually
First Guardian of the Galaxy was pretty decent. I thought it was okay.
I've heard someone said the other day the second one
loved
was
it.
Good. Yeah, I know.
But I thought it was okay.
That genre is just not for me. And I watched that one because it was like, no, this is like not like a normal one, and it's lighter, and it's got like universally great reviews. I couldn't believe how much I didn't like it. It was
well, I mean, part of the reason, like, I'm not a big Superman fan because, like, the story behind Superman is really not that compelling. Oh, he's from an alien planet and he's got all these superpowers,
superhero,
and like nobody can beat him. That's not compelling. The X-Men story to me, like the first couple X-Men movies were so good because the stories of each one of the characters and how they came together and the social conflict between mutants and regular humans. That's a really compelling storyline. All the other, like, the Incredible Hulk and Spider-Man was okay and stuff like that, but their storylines are not nearly as compelling as the X-Men storyline was for me. That's why I liked when they first started coming out because they came out with the best first, and then everything after that was kind of garbage in my opinion.
Yeah, I always just felt like maybe I'm just like an old dude and it's like, oh, I only like the first couple ones that I saw and now I don't like the other ones. But, maybe they're just better.
They are better. They're just better.
Also, what thing ever made new gets better over, like, there's always diminishing returns. Like, that's why
Rocky IV.
Yeah, how many Spider-Man
that's why there's like 3 sequels ever that are
Rocky
considered
IV.
great. Yeah, exactly. So
He's the best Rocky. Hands down.
And
Rocky versus the Russian.